From the John Nevada Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Masano on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now, here is Jim and Rich.
John left the back door open and the keys in the car again. We're off and running once again. And another edition of the Armchair Experts, Jim Leon and Rich Massaro, like it or not.
Did you come up with that line because Dana told you that when she listened to the show last time that we had to build up our energy? We didn't have a lot of energy to begin with.
She thought we were a little slow to start out with, and we built from that point. But we've got this music and the whole thing. We sound like real professionals today.
I tell you what, I thought she might have written that opening line for you.
I know. No, I came up with that one all by myself.
All right.
I don't see the clock started, so I guess we're just going all.
Hey, what the heck? We'll go 2-3 hours.
We'll go 2-3 hours today. We'll see. We'll see what happens. He'll just have to cut us off at some point. Rich, we've got a lot of things to get to tonight. As we're taping this, it's an evening. It's a Thursday evening. I thought we'd kind of wrap up the season with the hockey season in basketball to start out with a few odds and ends, and especially since there was some things that happened this week that kind of set people off on edge. And as I hold up the Sun-Times to you.
Head games. You know what though? What is that? I don't.
That's Justin Bieber.
Oh, Justin Bieber. Okay.
That's Justin Bieber standing in the Blackhawks locker room on the crest.
Oh, okay.
Taking a picture of the Indian head.
Okay, well.
That got
people mad.
That got people all upset. As a matter of fact, I had to laugh today because Scott Stantis in the Tribune had a great perspective with his political cartoon on the whole Justin Bieber thing. If in the first panel, there is a typical Chicago fan looking at, apparently following the news on his Android or his iPhone, and he's saying, "Never-ending gang violence." And the next panel is pensions destroying our government budgets, and he yawns. And the third panel is, so what are we outraged by? And the fourth panel, he's in full explosion joke, going, "Justin Bieber stood on what?"
That is. I like that cartoon, Jim. That is good. Hey, did you see though? Talking about the Hawks, did you see the inside part where we have a guy the same size as Dino Chara from Sweden that's going to be playing with the Ice Hogs this.
Oh, really?
Summer. Yeah. If you look, I forget his name. Right there. There's a picture of him. What's his name?
Okay, Victor Svedberg.
Victor Svedberg, yes. And he's 6 feet 9 inches
tall. 6'9", says the North American game suits him well.
Yeah.
He was at the prospect camp on Wednesday at Johnny's Ice House West, and he is apparently guaranteed to play in Rockford.
I'll tell you what, I love the prospect camp. I love reading those names, and I like to think about what they're going to do when they're in Blackhawks uniforms.
I know.
Shortly.
I know. Or in the Ice Hogs uniforms makes me want to make sure I go see a Wolves game this year, especially when Rockford. Actually, I have friends who live out in Rockford. I may go out and visit them.
Have you ever seen one of their games at Rockford?
No.
I was just wondering what the facility was.
No, it's supposed to be a nice facility.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a nice facility, and I'd love to make sure I take a run out there. It obviously, we're still basking in the glow of a Stanley Cup victory, still kind of doing it. I kind of miss hockey. Every so often I go play a tape I have off of YouTube of the goal horn and Chelsea Dagger, just to kind of help me through the downtime.
I'll tell you what, we were talking on the phone last night about possibly doing a show where we would list the 10 greatest games we've ever seen.
I've got that list started on mine.
I'll tell you what, that game is going to be on my list. So, also though, I have to say though, some of the other games that may be on my list. I was at Wrigley Field one day when Ed Bailey hit a home run. And if those of you who don't remember Ed Bailey, that was probably the mid-'60s. He was a pitcher for the Cubs.
Lonis Edgar Bailey.
Yeah, Lonis Edgar Bailey. He hits a home run, and I'm sitting there with 3 or 4 of the guys from the neighborhood cutting up, and a guy in the right field bleachers stands up to catch the ball. hits him in the head and goes on to Waveland Avenue. We're, this guy is in pain, and we're like, oh, this is fantastic. So that game might be on there too. I don't know.
Played for the Reds, played for the Giants, played for the Cubs. Ed Bailey.
Yes, definitely did. That one rates up there with the time I was at Wrigley Field and Harold Skinny Brown pitched for the
Pirates?
Colt 45 at the time.
Colt 45.
And stifled the Cubs on anywhere between 13 and 19 hits, but they still beat them. So
you remember the game in the early days of the Mets when the Mets beat the Cubs 19-0?
That sticks in my memory.
Do you remember the story about the guy who called the paper in New York and he said, "I understand the Mets scored 19 runs today," and the guy who answered the phone says, "Yes, sir, that's correct." And he paused for a moment. And the guy said, "Did they win?"
That must have been like 1962.
It's like 1962 or 63.
So let's get back, Jim. No, we're getting sidetracked already. Here.
I know. This is here we are.
The Hawks, maybe?
Here we are, short attention span. Obviously, there's been some moves made this year, and the moves I certainly could understand.
Sure.
No
doubt about it.
Bickle lost my. There it is. All of a sudden, the headset went out. I got panicky.
I couldn't hear you either.
That might be a blessing. Some people might say.
You got to be kidding.
Obviously, the changes that were made, I can understand them. This
Sure.
was not a wholesale breakup like we had to see in 2010 just to save cap room, but obviously to be able to sign Bickle. And the people that are gone didn't totally surprise me. It's going to be a shame to see Dave Bolin gone, but
and Michael Froehlich did an excellent job on the penalty kill this year with Marcus Kruger. He was a consistently excellent performer on the penalty kill. So one of the best in the league. What I was going to say, Jim, when you're talking about that, one of the comments that Stan Bowman made in the papers was that, hey, we have some guys at Rockford who've been waiting to come up, and some of these things, you don't want to do them. I mean, these are guys who really contributed to the Stanley Cup winning team, but you also want to reward those guys who are at Rockford and are Major League ready. And it really made me think, Jim, of what we were talking about last time we broadcast, when you talked about the Yankees back in the 50s and 60s and how they always replaced talent with better and younger talent. And actually today I was reading in Baseball America, and I don't remember which columnist it was, but they talked about the Atlanta Braves from about 1988 to, you could almost say, the present. They have consistently been in the playoffs. They probably missed the time or two in there.
There was, 14 years in a row they made the playoffs.
They did make the playoffs 14 years in a row, and it goes right back to what you had mentioned about the Yankees. The columnist said, and when they talked to the people with the Braves, they said, hey, we keep replacing the talent, but with younger talent and, obviously guys who are ready for the majors. And I think the same thing is true of the Blackhawks. You don't want to see a Boland or a Froehlich or an Emery or whoever it happens to be go, because they were all really good contributors. But at the same time, you have guys down in the farm system who are NHL ready, and you want those. You want to reward those guys. You don't want them stuck, and you don't want people in the farm system thinking, "Hey, I'm stuck here forever. The big club's never going to bring me up." So you hate to see those guys go, but I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. I think so too, and that we'll kind of touch on that same idea when we start to talk baseball in a little bit today.
Boy, that's going to be scary.
Baseball. I know. This is not a year that I really want to remember baseball-wise. I never have been so concerned with minor leagues than I have this year watching the Cubs and the Sox.
Every time I talk to you, Jim, we get into a discussion about the minor leagues of both of those teams.
Oh, this is just awful. We obviously had the big to-do today, the last couple of days, over Justin Bieber's horrendous action. Now every member of the press wants to come down next season and jump on top of the crest, because they've had guys in the past threaten to put them in lockers if they walked on the crest.
I actually, when I went through the paper today, I saw that there was some kind of controversy with Justin Bieber, but I didn't even bother really to read it. And now when you're showing me what he did, I'm thinking, what What is the big deal?
I don't know, but the thing that I probably got more aggravated with, and I printed off a blog from a friend of mine, Daniel Ramirez, who blogs and calls himself the Little Misanthrope. He says, and Daniel, I apologize, I'm probably misquoting your title, but ruminations of a lapsed Catholic and a disillusioned liberal. Mm-hmm. He went berserk with after Jim Belushi held the Stanley Cup over his head the night the Hawks won. In fact, to the point that he was most angry about him sticking his nose into the moment with Michael Handzus and his child, trying to take pictures with that.
You know what, Jim? I would be more critical of that than what I see Justin Bieber doing here. But to be honest with you, neither one of them are, it's not that big of a deal. You would expect that type of thing from Jim Belushi, and I don't see what Justin Bieber doing here is anything disrespectful at all.
I don't think so either. I guess the only thing that people say, here's guys from the Blackhawk sales office, sales guy standing there watching him do it.
Well, I mean, you got a photographer there taking a picture, so everybody's pretty much aware this is what he's going to do. It's not like he snuck into the Hawks locker room or broke in and decided to take surreptitiously take a picture of the Indian head.
Yeah. I think the issue that Daniel has as far as Belushi is a lot of people seem to have made Jim Belushi the face of Chicago sports fandom.
I always thought it was Bill Murray, and I always really wondered about that too. To me though, I think you have to take it as it is. These are people in show business, and the old show business adage is whether the publicity is good or bad. It's publicity, and that's what they want. And so it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't really offend me. I don't think that Belushi belonged on the ice with the Stanley Cup. But, it happened. It happened. If people start to take offense at stuff like that,
he got there somehow.
Yeah, he did. Well, he's got enough money. He could pay to get on the ice.
I doubt if he paid.
I don't think he paid. But
I think what did Daniel refer to him as at one point in time here? Everyone's favorite unwelcome house guest / civic pariah. Couldn't resist hijacking the moment from a group of world-class athletes who played with broken bones and God knows what else, to hoist the very trophy that Belushi had no business putting his hands on in the first place.
Well, I would say this, though. I don't think that actually, if the person that you're quoting there is objecting to it, and other people maybe watching that don't have a forum objected to it, I don't think he really, how did he put it? I don't think he kidnapped, or what did he say, hijacked the moment from anybody. I think everybody realizes what Jim Belushi was probably up to, and you could like it or not like it, but I don't think it was that big of a thing, Jim.
Daniel keeps saying the wrong Belushi died.
Okay.
He's a little brutal on that.
I guess
he's a little.
You know what? We were just talking to John before we came on the air, and we were saying, John was talking about sitting out in his
out the screen porch there?
The screen porch, thinking. And, I think he was intimating sometimes he's got a little bit too much time to think. And sometimes I think the same thing about myself. But I think Daniel, what is his name? Ramirez, may have quite a bit of time to think, too. Because he's,
Daniel's working the all-night shifts, the night shift. So I think he has his spots then.
Then you have a lot of time to
think. I think John needs to come for coffee with us one of these mornings. Maybe we'll all sit there at over at Mariano's and think together for a while. You're invited any time, John.
Sounds good, John.
Okay? All right, sounds good. What should we finish off as far as basketball? Obviously, since the last time we got together, Miami won their second title. And have you ever seen anybody's every movement analyzed, taken apart the way LeBron James is taken apart every time he does something?
I tell you what, he's the king, and he's the best basketball player there is today. I personally am prejudiced. I'm obviously a Chicago fan. He's never going to take Michael Jordan's place in my heart or my mind. But I tell you what, looking at the way the NBA is today, and I think LeBron's only 28. Mm-hmm. He very well could end up with more NBA championships than Michael did. But I look at that the same way I look at say, Roger Maris breaking Babe Ruth's single-season record, or Barry Bonds being the all-time career home run champion. They will have their place in the books, but some people are not replaceable. But I know that's not your question. I have to say I was listening to, I don't listen to much sports radio, but I happened to listen to, I think it's the Jeff Rickard show on ESPN Radio, a little bit of that last night. And they were talking about not this year's, but next year's NBA free agent class. And, of course, LeBron will be in that. And there's all kinds of rumors flying that he may go back to Cleveland, or will he go out to L.A., maybe play with Kobe. I know that a few times in Chicago.
Not enough basketballs.
I don't know about that.
You know what? LeBron is more of an all-around player.
I'd say LeBron is a pretty good team player. Mm-hmm. And they also have mentioned that he might come to Chicago. But I don't know. I don't know if he's going to move or not. The thing that I was going to say about the Bulls, though, is I like they're doing something similar, I think, to what I see the Blackhawks having done last season. They're pretty much staying pat, and they added a guy that I think they need in Mike Dunleavy Jr., who's a good three-point shooter. Right. They need somebody who to stretch the defense out a little bit. But you and I have talked, and Jim, believe me, I'm not. I know a lot of guys who would say something like I'm about to say, would say it in a controversial way. And I wanted everybody to understand how I'm saying this. We were talking about Derrick Rose one day, you and I.
Right.
And I said, you know what? I'm not advocating, like a lot of people are very upset that Derrick Rose didn't come back before the end of last year. And their people are just upset with Derrick Rose in general, which I don't understand. I mean, the man was injured. They said he was going to be out for about a year. He's out. It looks like he's going to come back this coming year. If he doesn't, then he's really seriously hurt to the point where if he can't even come back next year or part of next year, then he's really got some real issues with his knee. But I would say this. I'm not advocating it again, but right now I think the Bulls have a really nice team in place around him. They have a lot of nice parts that would make a championship team. My feeling is that, and I know there's people who would disagree with this, I don't think that you're going to win an NBA championship with your team built around a point guard.
No,
I don't care who it is. And I know that I've read some columnists and whatnot who say, they're saying differently. I don't agree with them. What I would say, again, I'm not advocating it, but I'd say, if I was the Bulls, I'd see what could you possibly get for Derrick Rose. If you could get two really good players, and I don't know what the salary cap situation is, but if you could get two really good players for Derrick Rose, why not think about it? Because I'm really thinking that what's going to happen is by the time, Rose will come back next year. We just wasted a whole year with him being out. Say he got hurt again next year, or he couldn't play next year. We'd waste another whole year, and again, then he wouldn't be tradable. But I'm saying, to me, just explore the possibility. I'm not advocating it, but explore the possibility of bringing in a couple of strong players to go with the group you have, and see what's out there, see what you can get for Derrick Rose.
I'm trying to sit here and say, trying to come up with a appropriate response. Going, you'd want to trade the former MVP with a bad knee right now.
Well, what I'm saying is, he was an MVP that didn't really help us win any championships. I mean, he was an MVP that year. He had a great year. Let me tell you, Jim, he's an outstanding talent. Here's my point, though. Unless the man really changes his game, which I understand he's working on a jump shot, he's working to do that. But with his size in the NBA, with the type of game that he has, the chances of him maybe getting hurt again are probably, I'm not saying they're extreme, but I'm saying there's a possibility, because he's really almost an inside player in a small man's body. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how well you're going to hold up in the grind of an 80-some game NBA season year after year if that's going to be your game. I remember when I think he hurt his ankle one time, and I don't know if it was the last year he played or the previous year, and he was sort of slowed down. And I remember seeing a game.
The season with the lockout, he missed a lot of games.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was that season. I watched a game where he was still hurting a little bit, and he played that game, and I thought, man, he is really effective because he's, you know what? Let's put it this way. When you put the rest of your teammates a lot of times in a situation where you blow by everybody so fast now that you're almost making them spectators as well, and you're the point guard who's really supposed to be involving everybody. I tell you what, when I saw that game where he was on the gimpy ankle and he was just distributing the ball and just, maybe standing and dribbling and looking for the right guy to pass to and really distributing to his teammates. And I'm not saying he's selfish or there's anything wrong with what Derrick Rose does, but he was really effective in that game. And the thing that I worry about a little bit with him is because of the type of game he has, and he's such a high flyer and he goes so fast. Hey, his good buddy Dwight Howard knocked the bejesus out of him a couple of times coming down the lane, just saying, hey, when Dwight was with Orlando, just saying, hey, buddy, you're not going to do this, no matter if we're friends or not. And you're going to take that kind of abuse. I mean, it's just, if that's your game and you're the most effective guy on your team, expect to get knocked down and expect to get knocked down often because that's the way they're going to stop you. They're going to slow you down. And so my point is not that I think Derrick Rose is not a good team player, not that he's not a great player. I just don't know that the Bulls are going to win any championships with Derrick Rose as their number one player.
They cannot build an effective team around him, or with him as the primary. You need another piece to it. You need the shooter.
Yeah.
You need the guy that can come down there. Is that Luol Deng? No. Is Joakim Noah your inside presence? No.
Okay.
Is Mike Dunleavy Jr.?
No. But
No.
that's why I'm saying though. Let me say this though, Jim.
Yeah.
You have a team that without Derrick Rose did very well this year. Okay. Obviously,
made the playoffs.
Guys like
5th seed, 6th seed.
And actually, people were saying without Derrick Rose, they probably wouldn't make the playoffs at all. With a coach like Tom Thibodeau, if Luol Deng and Joakim Noah are guys who are okay with him, and I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend that I understand all of the defensive principles of basketball or professional basketball or any kind of basketball, and I know that they probably can get fairly complex. I'm not going to say complicated because it's only a game, but they're probably fairly complex. And guys like Deng and Noah are okay with Thibodeau, as Rose is as well. And because he's a defensive guy, he wants his guys to play defense. Then I have no problem with Luol Deng or Joakim Noah's game. Okay, and I don't see them replacing him. That's why what I'm saying is, are you going to now say take all of those nice parts that you have of a team and break that up and try to put another team around Derrick Rose? That's my whole point in saying, I'm not saying trade him, but at least see what maybe you could get for him, because maybe you got a nice team in place, and maybe a couple more guys will put you over the top, depending on who those guys are.
The key again is going to be who the bench mob is. Now, one of the things you brought up, you said that the Bulls stayed pretty much stood pat this year. One of the reasons they had to do that is they're up against the salary cap,
yeah.
and really can't do anything else this year.
I'll tell you what, Jim. Though my honest feeling, and it's not that I'm trying to be negative, but if you want my honest to God gut feeling about the Bulls, I think you're going to see a highly competitive team for a lot of years. That's not going to be championship caliber.
No, they're going to be that rung right below it.
They're going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers of the 90s, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
A good team that just, here's the other thing. You're up against, it's just like Charles Barkley and Clyde Drexler and Patrick Ewing and whoever else you want to name, all excellent players, great players. We're in a league with Michael Jordan, Okay, they couldn't reach the top. Well, I have to tell you this. You're in a league with LeBron James, and I don't care if your name's Kobe Bryant. I don't care if your name is Derrick Rose or whatever it is. That's the guy you got to beat. And as long as he's healthy and as long as he's with a team that's decent, they're going to be the favorites.
Is he the face of this era?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'll never be able to really warm up to LeBron James, but when you're asking me to be honest, I got to tell you, in all honesty, he's the guy for this century, or not this.
Maybe this decade.
I should say.
Because I kind of went back and looked at the different eras, what we could define as the different eras of the NBA, and defined who was the dominant team, who was the dominant players. You go in the early days, from the start of the NBA in '47 up to about '56, you had the Minneapolis Lakers. And they won 5 titles during that period, and that was the days of George Mikan and Jim Pollard, Clyde Levalette,
Vern Mickelson.
Then we went into between '57 and 1969. That was the era of the Boston Celtics, Bill Russell, Cousy, John Havlicek. 11 titles. You realize they beat the Lakers 7 times?
Yeah.
During that period?
Yes, yeah.
The 70s was kind of the lost decade. To me,
it was a drug decade.
It was the drug decade, and it was the drug decade, and nobody really was the dominant player, the dominant team. You had the Knicks win a couple of times. The Lakers won. The 80s, that kind of was the period of Boston and the Lakers.
Definitely. Magic and Larry.
And Larry. That was the period. That was the period that brought the NBA back.
It did. I mean, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird coming to the NBA. I'll tell you what, Jim, and I'm not going to digress too much, but I myself and 3 other guys had season tickets for the Bulls in the early '80s, and we were religious. We went to basically every game, and we I won't say where the seats was because I want to get to the punchline, but I can remember. We were guys who hung around after the game, and I think it was gate 2.5 or 3.5.
Gate 3.5.
3.5 was where everybody came out,
right.
The players. So we'd be in the players'
right.
lot waiting for them to come out. And it was a Sunday afternoon. It was toward the end of whatever season. And I'm not going to say the players' names because, these guys, things may be totally different for them now. But a friend of mine and I stood there and watched a Cadillac drive into the players' parking lot. And at the same time that a young kid, I'm talking about probably less than 9 years old, between 5 and 9, came up for an autograph for these 2 players. This car drove up, and they're buying drugs out of the car. And they were within 30 feet of the building. And so this is the type of era that it was. So let's go. But that's another story for another day. But let's go back to what you're talking about.
Yeah. Now, we moved into the 90s where you basically obviously the Bulls won 6 times in the 90s. Houston won a couple of times. And the first decade of the millennium, we had the Lakers and the Spurs basically dominate the league. Those were the faces of the league. Now we're kind of at this period, is Miami going to be the face of the league? And are they going to dominate for a long time? Personally, I think maybe another year.
I think they could do it another year.
I think I would not be surprised if they find a way to move Bosch.
That's what they're talking about, but I don't understand that. I know that they were talking about if they didn't win the whole thing that they would move Bosch, and they had their reasons, I guess their cap reasons and
there's
whatnot.
Cap reasons, there's cap issues.
But if you got if you got a championship thing going, and Bosch is a big part of it, then why are you going to move him? Here's the thing, though. I see, and we keep coming back on the same theme. Again, we talked about the Yankees, and I think we talked about how they replenished, and we also talked about how they grabbed veteran players who filled the role. And I see Miami at this point being very savvy about that. I remember I was telling a friend of mine before we ever did this show or even knew we were going to do this show, when Ray Allen was coming out in free agency,
right.
I said that would be the perfect guy for the Bulls. I'm not saying Ray Allen per se, because I don't think the Bulls were at the same stage that the Heat was at. But a guy like Ray Allen, who's a guy, when he shoots, you're pretty darn sure that ball's going to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, who grabs Ray Allen from the Celtics but the Heat? The perfect guy for the Heat. I mean, guy's not going to, he might play 20 minutes on a certain night, but mostly he's going to give you 10 or 11 minutes, but he's going to give you a huge offensive presence.
He gave a presence. He gave a presence, and quite frankly, the two names we just talked about here, Chris Bosh and Ray Allen, LeBron James should thank both of them.
No, I mean, Michael Jordan or Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle should thank all the guys they played.
No, I'm saying you come down to Game 6.
Mm-hmm.
You come down to Game 6. If Bosh didn't grab that rebound, and Allen didn't throw in that three,
mm-hmm. But Jim, that's the way it's got to be. I don't care how great the player is. My point is this: he's not always going to be in the right spot at the right. He's not always going to be in the right spot at the right time. He's not always going to be able to make the big play at the key time. As much as say again, you get a guy like Michael Jordan. He look at his commercial where he says, I've been, I've taken the winning shot or the final shot how many times and how many times he missed, but they remember the ones he made.
Sure.
So it's not like, we have our heroes and we have guys who really done well, but regardless of how good they are, we always needed those other guys, those other strong guys to help you out.
Yeah, exactly. I have a lot more respect over the last couple of years watching LeBron, especially at the end of the championship series, just watching his performance and the way he acted on the court. The first thing he did 2 years ago, when they beat Oklahoma, was go to the Oklahoma bench and congratulate all the players.
Yes, yeah.
Dwayne Wade was jumping around and looking for a camera.
Yeah.
This year, the first person he looked for was Tim Duncan.
Well, I would say Dwayne Wade is a whole different, and I'm not knocking Dwayne Wade, that's a whole different personality than LeBron. I think LeBron is a guy that is very aware of what his stature is within the game of basketball, and he's trying to go about doing things the right way.
Yes.
And I think that's an excellent thing.
I think he is. I think he realized his mistake with the decision a couple of years ago and has been paying for it and trying to correct it ever since.
Definitely. Do you remember, Jim, when he was with the Cavs, and I don't know if they were in the finals or if it was the series to get to the finals, because I know they did make the finals one year with him.
Against San Antonio.
They lost, and then he ended up not shaking hands, and everybody made a big deal out of that. But I thought to myself, this is a typical media thing. Okay, this is a young guy. He's upset. Now, nobody ever asked him who he was upset with. I mean, he could have been upset with himself. But let's just put it this way. He was upset. They lost. He wanted, he obviously wanted to win and move on. Everybody did. And he walked off the court. Mm-hmm. But they made it was like a cause celeb for a while. I mean, but to me, it's still, and I'm sure when he saw some of those guys, whoever the team that they played was later, he maybe did make amends and said, you know what, hey, guys, I was just really upset, and I'm sorry. I walked off the court. I should have shook your hand or whatever. And I'm sure those guys understood. The only guys who don't understand, I think they do understand, but they need something to write and talk about is
the press.
Is us, the media. So,
well, people still talk about Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer not shaking hands with the Bulls. So.
Yeah, well, I think their persona was a little bit
different than that.
So.
Okay, I think we beat up. We can put basketball and hockey away for a while.
Now, do we have to talk about baseball?
I don't know.
I mean, what are we going
to? Well, why don't we talk about the Cubs first?
Well, that's fine. I always like talking about the Cubs.
I think
even when they stink.
There's sometimes there's signs of hope there.
That's the problem.
You talk about you can talk about teams being bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could talk about teams being, as the term has been bandied about on the score, they call them fun bad. Where you look at them and you go, well, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
They're not just awful. Miami, the Marlins, that's a bad team.
I wouldn't want to watch them.
That's a bad team. The Cubs, they're kind of fun bad. Because you look and you see something may be there. Something may be there.
You know what, Jim? I think what you're saying is 100% right on. The other thing I would say, though, is now think of what a problem that presents if you're Epstein and Hoyer and whoever else is making the decisions. Because in one instance, you're saying, hey, you know what? These guys are, they've taken 3 out of 4, or they've taken the last 3 or 4 series or whatever it happens to be. They're playing pretty good ball. They're hitting good. We're pitching good for the most part. And you see that sort of ray of sunshine, but you know what? At the same time, you have to pull yourself back from that and sort of say, well, wait a minute, we have a game plan here,
and
this isn't part of it, and they're sticking to it. And I'll tell you what, as you know, a lot of times I'm knocking it. You know what? But I don't want people to mistake I'm not knocking Epstein and Hoyer because they have a really super tough job to try to get this thing turned around. But the thing sometimes I wonder about, and I'll tell you what, they've made some great trades, and they've made what I consider some lousy trades, which is probably par for the course for any general manager. But I think one of my frustrations is the Cubs, and I would say have probably given away, and I say given away because I don't believe that the guys they're getting are prospects. I think they're more suspects than prospects. But they're giving away solid major league pitching for things that have no value.
You think Scott Feldman was a starter?
Well, I think he was.
This was the only team where he was going to get a chance to start.
And you know what? That was one of their good deals. They saw, and actually, if you go back prior to last year, I know Feldman had a pretty good year 2 or 3 years ago starting, so it's not like he hasn't had some success doing it. They've come up with some absolute gems. Travis Wood is a good example. Paul Maholm, for the short time he was here, is another good example. So it's not like they can't see talent. I don't think right now they have the money to spend on the talent, or they're not choosing to spend the money at the major league level.
What they're choosing to do is do a build from the ground up.
Right.
Because the philosophy, and I understand that philosophy, and it's very similar to what we were talking about with the Blackhawks, where you have the talent there.
Right.
And now you have the opportunity to let some people go for whatever reason that happens to be, contracts up, and you have the bodies to fill it in. This is what they're trying to do with the Cubs. And I understand that. Whether we can all have the patience for this remains to be seen. And it was interesting too, because I kind of looked at just a little comparison. Speaking of Theo in the past, I looked at the 04 Red Sox team and how they got all the players. That was the 04 World Champion Red Sox, and then I looked at the 07. Okay, there were a couple of players that fed in there that came through the draft. Specifically, Dustin Pedroia in 2007. He came from the amateur draft in 2004. Mark Bellhorn was the second baseman on the 2004 team who came in a trade with the Rockies. The other person that kind of filled in that became a key part of that team is Jonathan Papelbon. Came out of the 2003 draft. So, he started to fill that in. And I understand that this is what they need to do because there was nothing there. There was nothing. There's some hope in the future as you look there. Now we'll kind of talk about some of the issues with the foreign leagues, the Dominican leagues, because I kind of took a look back to see what's come out of there, and I only really went to the point where I could find the first year in the Dominican League where there was some stats reported, where I could see players who have gone on to have some major league potential. Out of the top hitters in 2006 in the Dominican League, only 4 of them have made the major leagues.
Okay.
And they're nothing.
Who are they?
Luis Jimenez has played 24 games with the Angels. He finally came up, and he finally came up at the age of 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So this for we go back to 2006 with him.
Okay.
Yamaiko Navarro, he's played. He's played 79 games over a period of time from 2010 to 2013. He's back in the minors right now. Jesus Sucre, a catcher, he's played 8 games. Francisco Pequero, he's played 23 games over 2003 and 2012 and 2013. There's some more interesting talent that came out of pitching that were pitchers in 2006 in the Dominican League. There have been about 7 pitchers that have gone into the majors. A couple of them have had some success. Alexei Oguando at Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good arm.
Good arm. He's on the DL right now and is expected to come back, but he's 4-2 with Texas in 10 games. And Julius Chassin with Colorado. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 outstanding arms.
Jim, we talked about this prior to the show as we talked during the week on the phone to see what we might be talking about. And one of the things that I keep thinking about, and it really irked me to see both the Cubs and Sox sign 16-year-old kids to contracts over $1 million, and that's not the part that irks me. The money doesn't irk me. But when you sign a 16-year-old player, that's a real. I mean, the draft itself, the regular draft is enough of a crapshoot. Now you're going to lay big money on 16-year-old kids, and really they could develop anyway or not at all. The problem I see with what's happening with such a concentration, especially on areas like the Dominican, and I know I said this to you, Dominican Republic is not big population-wise. And even though there have been a lot of really excellent players that have come out of there over the years, I'm just wondering how many times you can go to that well. Or I don't care if it's the Dominican, Venezuela, Cuba. These are all smaller countries. You don't have as big a pool to draw from. And you know what? You might draw some gems out of there. But how often is that going to happen for you? Look at when the majors went to Japan. I mean, you got Ichiro Suzuki out of there. You got was it Matsui? He was with the Yankees, right?
For all
and
those years.
He had Hideo Nomo.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be a couple other guys that I'm not thinking of that have been solid major leaguers. But by and large, the guys you've got out of there are not they're not major league ball players. So you've gotten one really outstanding ball player out of Japan. You've got a couple other really good ones. The rest are probably, you would say, mediocre or less. And although the track record with Dominican Republic and Venezuela has been better, how much longer can you expect it to be better? What are the odds?
Who knows? I mean, this might be something where we have to kind of follow some of these kids. Mm-hmm. And see how they progress. One that I looked at from 2006, who actually came up to the Cubs last year, was Alberto Cabrera. He was 1-1 in 25 games with the Cubs last year with a 5.4 ERA. He is at Tennessee right now as a starter. They're trying to make him a starter, and it may work. At least right now at Tennessee, he's 8-3 with a 3.32 ERA. 104 strikeouts in 105.2 innings. So there's an arm to keep an eye on in the future. It was kind of interesting too. I went back to the 06 Dominican team that the Cubs had. 2 players came out of that made it in the major leagues. As I said, Cabrera, who's only had 25 games, but an infielder named Marwin Gonzalez. Mm-hmm. Who's played some time with Houston. That's the only other player. So okay. I don't know what kind of success ratio they're going to have. Now, the other question I'd want to ask, do they dump Garza?
You know what, Jim, I was never that big of a Garza fan, because they always talk about Garza having all this great stuff. I know that he had at least one good year with Tampa when they won.
Right.
So, and the rest of it, I've been meaning to go on to Baseball Almanac and take a look at his overall record. But let me say this.
500 pitcher, maybe.
Probably. Right now, and I don't know what's driving it, but he looks really sharp. I don't know if we should, if it's something, put it this way, I don't think there's any question they're going to trade him. It seems like that's inevitable. But the other thing they're talking about is maybe trading him and then maybe going after him in the free agent market, which the more I think about it, doesn't really make sense. And actually I heard him say this about Ted Lilly when they traded him. You know, they said, okay, and I believe I've heard the same thing.
They said the same
numerous times, but other times.
They said the same thing about Maddox too when they traded him.
Yeah.
When they sent him to the Dodgers.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Before the Dodgers re-signed him again, that they thought, well, let's see if we can get him back, and he was very amenable to coming back to Chicago.
Sure.
But he finished his career in L.A.
You know, Jim, what you just had said about the one kid that had been up, Cabrera, the pitcher, and you talked about the number of strikeouts he had over the number of innings that he pitched, and it sounded like it was about a strikeout or a little bit better than a strikeout inning.
Right around that.
Maybe think about one of my pet peeves, if you want to put it that way, the way they approach handling pitchers. You know, I remember years ago reading the book White Rat about Whitey Herzog. And Whitey Herzog, even at that time, this was probably in the 80s, was saying, you know what is going on? We have pitchers who cannot finish games. And his theory, to make a long story short, was to say, what the problem is, it's not that they're not pitching enough. They're not using their arms enough to strengthen them to the point where they can pitch an 8 or 9 inning game. And I was just reading, like I said, I was reading Baseball America a little bit before I came here, and I don't remember what the kid's name was, but the Mets have this Harvey, and they have the other kid up, I can't think of his name, that are doing a pretty nice job for him.
Harvey especially.
Harvey's doing really well. They have a third kid in the minors that he came in the Toronto deal where they sent R.A. Dickey over. And they were talking about with Toronto, he was on a real pitch count in the minors, and he's not as much of one with the Mets, but they're still watching the number of pitches that he throws. And I'm thinking, you know what? There is something wrong when you it's like a bird, if you clip their wings, there's only so high or so far they can fly. When you start putting it in a guy's head, 6 innings, think about this. A quality start in the majors, Jim, 6 innings and 3 runs.
Right.
You know what that turns out, the earned run average-wise? I haven't put it to paper, but I'm going to say that's probably about a 4.5.
4 and change, 4.5.
4.5 earned run average,
yeah.
Which is not a good earned run average. That's supposed to be a quality start.
Yeah.
You start putting that in somebody's head, that the most he can go is 6 pitches, or you watch a game. I don't know if the Cubs do it as much, but I watched the Sox game. Almost from the first inning, you start to see that pitch count, and it's very aggravating for me to watch a Sox game. I have to sort of tune that out. I mean, that part of it's aggravating, because I'm thinking.
Other than listening to Hawk.
I mean, I guess I'm getting old because I can even stand Hawk now. But at any rate, you're looking at that darn pitch count, and you're thinking, what does that mean? Does that mean that this guy's shutting them out? But it's taking him. I'll give you a good example. Ed Jackson. Is it Edwin Jackson?
Edwin Jackson.
Edwin Jackson is a guy who throws a lot of pitches. Okay, if he's pitching a shutout and he's walking guys, okay, and he's putting some men on base, but he's still shutting them out. All of a sudden, you get to the magic number. Now you're going to take him out. I mean, he's still shutting them out. He may be using some pitches, and he put it this way. I don't care what you do with Edwin Jackson. His whole history has been a little wild. He walks guys, but he's also been effective most of the time. So what does that pitch count mean? Maybe he's a guy who gets stronger the more he throws, or maybe when he puts guys on, he concentrates more. I don't know.
Doesn't seem to be this year. Although it's interesting, you talk about pitch counts and the way they seem to hold them true. Sale was left in for 121 pitches today against the Tigers.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, to me, that's a good thing. Of course, they always are concerned about his elbow and whether he's going to break down. And a lot of people look at him and say he's a elbow injury looking for a place to happen just from his motion.
Why are they saying from his motion?
From his motion.
Okay.
From his motion, exactly. One of the people that was a great supporter of pitch counts back in the days when nobody really tracked pitch counts was Milt Pappas. the ex-Cub, ex-Oriole, ex-Red, wherever else he played for the Braves.
The Braves, yeah.
Too, because he came up to the major leagues at 18.
Sure.
And Paul Richards was the manager of Baltimore back then when he came up, and Richards didn't let him go very long. He told him. He said, I'm going to be watching how many pitches you throw, and don't be surprised if I take you out after you throw about 75 pitches.
Well, for an 18-year-old kid, I would say, in this case, you're talking about pitching in the major leagues, which is obviously that's a whole different ball game than playing in the minors.
I don't know if Milt Pappas ever played in the minors.
He may never have played in the minors. And then I would say, in that case, when you got a kid that young and you got him in the majors, because performance comes in, you have to perform. Then I would say that would be one time I would agree with watching a player's pitch count.
He credits Paul Richards for giving him the long career he had, because he was not in an organization where they just threw him out there and said, "Good luck to you, kid."
You know what, though, Jim? Look, I'll tell you what, though. I'm going to tell you, pitch counts are way overrated. I'm thinking. Remember the name Steve Dalkowski?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Steve Dalkowski was a guy who in the minors would, he might strike out 20 and he might walk 15. So it was nothing for him to go out and throw 200 pitches.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a hard thrower, but I don't think he ever had an arm problem.
Mm-hmm.
I know that a lot of your big name players, Warren Spahn, Juan Marichal, Sandy Koufax, all had games where they pitched extra innings and pitched over 200 pitches. And
the classic one between Marichal and Spahn.
Marichal and Spahn.
Yeah.
So the whole pitch count thing gets to me, but I'm getting us off of our subject, and are we getting some signals here?
No, he just let me know 10 minutes, so
Okay.
we've got plenty of time.
Okay.
We got
got
plenty of time. We
So don't we going to cover a topic or something? Though,
Well,
Jim?
I think let's talk about one other thing too. Since we're on the idea of baseball, let's talk about the other side of town, because obviously I don't know if I could define them as
shooby dooby.
Yeah.
The poor side of town.
I don't know if I can define them as fun bad. I think I just define them as bad.
Yeah, they sort of. I'm disappointed. I'm not a big Sox fan, but over the years, you know what? I've mellowed toward the Sox, and I watch them. And when they're good, I appreciate them. But this year, they are really not good, and they are finding a lot of ways to lose. And they are in a predicament because, who do you trade? Who are you going to try to get some value for? And wouldn't want to be in Rick Hahn's shoes.
No. I kept hearing him hammer on the radio. They've got nobody in the minor leagues. Well, I went online one day and I started to look up all the records in the minor leagues. Started first looking at the teams records in the minor leagues. And overall, you're talking about a system that's producing. It's about a 500 farm system. You've got a good team at Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a good record at Birmingham. You've got a winning record at Kannapolis, which is the high A.
Right.
And then I looked at each team. Birmingham was like 18 games over 500. They don't have a hitter over 300 in their lineup.
Okay.
So there's a whole lot of, and I looked at the pitching. There's a couple of pitchers down there that might have some hope in the future.
Mm-hmm.
The team at Kannapolis, there's another team. That's a whole lot of not much.
Okay.
The big issue, the big one they had looking at AAA, they've brought one of those pieces up when they brought up Josh Phegley. And that solved one of the problems that the White Sox have, certainly with catcher, because Tyler Flowers was just whoosh, yeesh.
Yeah, he was not playing well.
And Phegley had a good first game, then went 0 for the next game, but hit a grand slam today against the Tigers.
Well, Jim, I have to ask you this though: how much faith do you actually put in minor league statistics if you haven't really seen the player? I remember years ago when I used to get Who's Who in baseball religiously every year, and I'd look at the.
I almost picked it up yesterday. The 98th edition is on the
Okay.
newsstand.
And I would look at the minor league records, and when you look at a guy, say and I understand he came up young, Johnny Bench. You look at his minor league record, and you don't see any eye-popping statistics. You look at Carlton Fisk was another guy I looked at. You don't see super eye-popping statistics. A lot of the minor leagues, and you were a big Sporting News guy, I know,
Right.
Back in the day when the Sporting
Right.
News was a great publication. But when you would say, if a guy hit 20 home runs in the Eastern League, let's say, the Eastern League was notorious for having ballparks that were, and these are Double-A players, they were notorious for having ballparks that were pitchers' ballparks. Okay, you didn't get a lot of high averages, you didn't get a lot of home runs. And if a guy hit pretty well in those leagues, that might be an indication that he was a pretty good hitter. But put it this way, if a guy was only putting up a 270 average, maybe hitting 15 home runs, that didn't mean you're going to throw him out of contention to be on the big league team. You had to really see the guy. You had to see the situation. So when you say, you're looking at some raw numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very hard. My contention would be it's very hard to tell. I don't know what type of a league Kannapolis is in. I don't know if it's a hitters league, it's a pitchers league. I don't know what type of ballparks they're in. Birmingham is what, the Southern League?
Birmingham is the Southern League, I believe.
Yes,
yeah,
and,
that's a Double-A league.
Yeah,
And-
so
and-
all that comes in.
All of that comes in, and I think that's where the guys who've done all the great analyticals now that are going more and more with this, where they're starting to talk about major league equivalents or what this translates to for some of these players. And I think some of them is you just have to throw them up against the next level and see if they can progress well. And I'm not sure if AAA ball is the way we once looked at it, being that just step right below, where you can see if there's true talent there. Because you've got a lot of AAA players now. As I'm starting to scan some of the rosters, you see some guys there that are 30, 31, 33, 34. Maybe some of them still have some minor league experience. And they're just hanging on.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't follow it close enough to even have an opinion. I know you've been telling me for a couple of weeks that maybe Double-A is where they're going to jump from instead of Triple-A.
It seems
I don't know.
seems like it. If they can do it, that might be it. We've got about 5 minutes
Well,
left.
you got a picture of Brett Favre there.
Well, it was kind of interesting. Here, I was kind of scanning around some things the other day, and I found an article here that Mr. Kopic decides to put up. Chet.
Okay.
Chet Kopic. He talks about the 10 number one villains in Chicago sports.
Okay.
Starting with number 10, Joe Montana. Always seemed to kill the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, we talked about him the other day, John Starks.
Oh, yeah.
He said he would have been happy to carry a switchblade during his career with the Knicks.
Okay, Chet.
Number 8, Will Clark. He only hit .650 against the Cubs in 1989
Ooh.
in the playoffs. Number 7, Steve Garvey.
Steve Garvey, huh?
Oh,
yeah.
I
he
still
ruined
can't.
us when he was with the Padres. I know that.
1984. Number 6, Tito Landrum. Remember Tito Landrum?
No. I mean, I
He hit
remember
the-
him, but
he
I don't
hit the-
remember him doing anything.
He
against
hit the
Cubs.
home run in 1983 that beat the White Sox in the playoffs when he played for the Orioles.
Oh, okay.
And that just happened to be on the 150th pitch that Britt Burns served up in that game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We have an entry at number 5, 5A and 5B, Isaiah Thomas and Bill Lambier.
Oh, they're a team, as
That's
usual.
right. Number 4, Charles Martin.
Okay.
Number 3, Marty Brenneman.
Hey.
Marty Brenneman just made a comment one time that he thought Cub fans were the most obnoxious fans in baseball. He makes the comment here that if fans in the city of Philadelphia, they if there's no games, they go to the local airport and boo bad landings. Number 2, Brett Favre.
Okay.
And number 1, Mike Schmidt.
Oh, okay.
Seems like he hit 316 home runs against the Cubs.
I know he hit more against the Cubs than any other.
I remember going to a Cub game, and he came in, and George Frazier came in, and a friend of mine said, first pitch, he said he's going to walk Schmidt. Frazier always walks the first hitter. And I put my finger in my mouth and held it up, checked the way the wind was blowing, and I said, second pitch at the latest, just to the right of the 368-foot sign. I said, $5 on it.
That figures.
And he looked at me and he said, you're on. Second pitch. Boom!
Oh, Jim.
I just held out my hand.
There you go. Well, you know what, Jim? I have to tell you, just to show you how ridiculous it could get in this, and I wouldn't say that we're in the profession. We're just playing around with it. But I mentioned to you the other day there was an article in Sports Illustrated about Yasiel, and you say his last name Puig. I heard him say Puig. And the article said that he had reached, he had 27 hits in his first 15 games, and he was only exceeded in that by Bo Hart and Ian Waldron. So I decided to look up Bo Hart and Ian Waldron. Bo Hart was a second baseman with the Cards for 2 years in 2003 and 4. He had a lifetime 272 average, got 84 hits in his career. Okay, and Ian Waldron.
But he had a good start.
He had a good start. Ian Waldron was an outfielder for the Brewers and the Senators in 1901. He played 1 year, had a 311 average, had 186 hits. So he had a really nice career for 1 year, and that was it.
He had a big career for a good.
Yeah, and I'm thinking this guy was being totally serious. I mean, hey, he got more hits in less time than Bo Hart or Ian Waldron, and I'm like, wow, okay. So,
Mr. DeVito, how much time do we have? Whatever.
Whatever. Look at John. He's like, okay.
You guys just do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want. That's right. So,
I thought we would wrap it up with two thoughts here. First of all, you know I listen to I'm a devoted Score listener, and every Thursday at 5 o'clock is always Who You Crappin'.
okay.
Kevin will get mad at me for just saying that, but that's the name of the bit. A big loss this past weekend. The man that we all referred to as the king of the crappers, Gary from Evanston, who could come up with a crap that would work in an obscure reference to Bonanza and the Montreal Expos before he got into it. Passed away at the age of 59, and, that was a big loss, and I just want to offer condolences. But we also have another person we have to offer condolences to. A gentleman in Ohio named Scott Ensminger passed away on July 4th at the age of 55. He was a lifelong Cleveland Browns fan and a season ticket holder, and he also wrote a song each year and sent it to the Cleveland Browns, as well as offering other advice on how to run the team. He respectfully requests 6 Cleveland Browns pallbearers so that the Browns can let him down one last time.
Oh, boy. Is that how we're going to end the show? Okay.
I think
good for you, Scott.
let's end it on an upbeat note.
Was that it?
I don't know. I don't know what else. You got a better ending for that?
No, I don't think so.
All right. I think Cub fans, we can all relate to that.
I have to say we have to thank Jim and John, who are sitting here 10 feet from us and
spinning the
putting
dials.
up with all of our nonsense and listening to this whole broadcast. John DeVita, you know what? How do you get into the Chicago Broadcast Hall of Fame? Because I think we should really nominate John. When you folks, if you could sit here and see what John has done in his basement, and again, he won't say what the number is, but see, the investment that he's made in this place, and made a really nice studio, and I'll tell you what, John. Broadcast Communication Hall of Fame.
There you go.
If we can find out how to nominate you, I'm going to do it.
There you go. That's it. All right, Rich, I think we ran through everything again.
Well, we ran through a lot.
All right.
I don't know. You know what, Jim? I'll tell you, thank God we only do this once every couple of weeks because, talking about the Cubs, I'm really a positive person, but talking about the Cubs and Sox is downright, it's aggravating. So
right.
I hate to be aggravated. So
all right.
Find something else to talk about.
All right, next time, football.
Oh, God, now you want to really talk about, okay, that's fine.
Next time we got to start on football. It's going to be close to Bourbonnais next time we get together.
Well, you know what?
We'll talk football.
I think Jim is back there applauding, but I know that he's a big soccer fan. He probably wants us to talk about soccer.
Okay. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John Levita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Masardo. This program was directed by John Levita, edited by Stephen Lehman, and audio engineer was James Rohde. This program was pre-recorded on Thursday, July 11th, the year 2013. Thanks for listening.